guys, it's me, Jack Marin. I am chatting with you today about some of the labels that are associated with excessive drinking. And I know that when I was first examining my relationship with drinking and whether or not I considered it to be a problem and that kind of thing, one of the first areas where I experienced resistance was with the concept of these labels. I got really hung up in names, words. What does this word mean versus that? So when I'm talking about labels, I'm talking about things like the big one, alcoholic, right? Everybody wants to know, am I an alcoholic? In fact, that's one of the most popular Google searches these days. Am I an alcoholic? Does admitting this make me an alcoholic? What if I'm just abusing alcohol right now? Does that mean that I'm an alcoholic? What if I'm just kind of a heavy drinker? Or am I sort of more of a problem drinker? Or maybe I'm just self-medicating because I'm going through a tough time. Or, I don't drink all the time. And when I do, sometimes it's fine and sometimes it's not. And I drink too much. So I'm kind of a gray area drinker, or, when I go to the doctor, I check the box that says I'm a social drinker. So you get the point. There's so many labels and words to describe different levels of drinking, and we all kind of want to gravitate toward the I'm just a social drinker versus any of the others. Those don't feel so good to say out loud, or they have this stigma with them. So in my opinion, there's really no one size fits all word or label to describe each and every person's relationship with alcohol. So I believe that we are all individuals. We all got here from different places. We have very different backgrounds and experiences. So even though, for example, if you and I were together and we were having dinner and we might have the exact same amount of alcohol, there are so many different variables that might determine whether or not you have a problem versus me, or whether we both have a problem or not, or no one. So there are just so many factors like predisposition and environmental factors and gender and height and weight and body chemistry and all kinds of different things that factor into that. So it's not so easy to just say, if you do this, then you're that. If you have this much, then you're that. There are, certain definitions. If you were to Google or to, look at certain, of course, medical journals and things like that, there are certain things that will have an exact definition. But even within those definitions, there's still, I don't want to call it wiggle room to make it sound so unscientific, but there's room within those definitions where there could be a large spectrum of different types of drinking behaviors and still be considered an alcoholic or not. So that is a little bit of a different topic about whether or not someone is quote unquote an alcoholic. But for the purposes of today, I want to talk about labels in general and how that can affect your progress toward living a sober lifestyle or moderating your drinking or whatever your goal might be. Labels are very common. I mean, we like labels, I guess is what I'm trying to say, especially in American culture, and as humans, we want things to fit neatly into categories, and we want to put a label or a name on those categories, and then we want to fit into one of those categories, and we want to associate ourselves with certain labels. It's just sort of the way we are, it's the way we're wired, right? And labels often become our identity, which isn't a bad thing. There's a lot of great labels. Like I identify with being a mother, and, maybe I identify with being a police officer or being a college graduate or whatever it might be. But there are some downsides to labels. For example, I think that sometimes they can be really limiting. And I think that they can hold us back sometimes in terms of change and progress and evolution. And there's a downside to identifying too much with a word or label. For instance, in the example of a police officer, that's a wonderful and honorable profession. But what happens to me if I've identified my whole life with that label and then I get let go from that job? Does that mean I'm less of a person, I'm less valuable? So that is one downside to a label. The other thing is, it can just really Like, let's say, or I guess on the flip side of that, what happens if I consider myself a smoker? Does that mean in my mind I'm always a smoker? People can tend to kind of give up on themselves when they attach too much to a certain identity or label. So, I just believe that we are what we say we are. For each individual person, we have the power to make that change. Our words are extremely powerful. The way we speak to ourselves is extremely powerful. So this is a little bit of an aside note, and I didn't necessarily want to talk about this, but there was a point in time when I was knowing logically that I at least was open to the idea that I kind of knew that I was going to end up in a sober lifestyle, but I was nowhere actually near doing it yet, if that makes any sense. It was a thought, but the actions weren't following it. Nonetheless, I started saying to myself, I'm a non-drinker. I don't like the taste of alcohol. I'm a healthier person who doesn't put alcohol in their body, even though at that point in time, I was probably drinking every day. But I believe and I know the power of the word, and sometimes that felt really crazy, but I do believe that I was planting that seed, and that ultimately that helped when the time came to really make that commitment that I'd already sort of tried that on. So with people ask me, here and there, are you an alcoholic? I mean, I guess I would just say, I suppose that depends on your definition of an alcoholic. I mean, like I said, I've tried on every label that there is. And when I was in my early sobriety and even before that, I did all that by myself. I was very isolated. I was almost sort of ashamed of my sobriety because I was still so hung up on all of these names and labels and stigmas that are associated with it. So I tried them all on. I tried saying I'm an alcoholic. I tried saying, I'm an addict. I'm a problem drinker, or, just none of them felt right to me at the time. In fact, they all felt really wrong. They all felt like they just didn't fit right with either me or my behaviors or whatever it was. It just didn't feel right. Now, I will fast forward a little bit and just give you a sneak peek into today. Today, I feel that none of those are wrong. So while I don't necessarily identify with any particular label per se, I also don't have a problem with any of them. So if I were to describe my past drinking behavior and someone said to me, oh, so you're an alcoholic, I'd be like, okay, cool. Or if someone said, oh, you're a fellow addict like myself, I'd be like, rock on. That sounds great, because I don't have a huge attachment to any particular word or meaning. I just know what my personal relationship with alcohol was. But if that means something to you and that resonates with you, I'm totally cool with that. The other thing is, I have the utmost respect for addicts in general, anyone who's struggled with addiction. I have seen more resilience and strength and power and stories of hope and transformation and triumph in my days since I started my sober journey, that I am literally day after day inspired by people who have gone through addiction. So if someone were to call me an addict, I'd be like, well, I'm in some pretty awesome company. So that's where I am now. But, of course, it was not always that way. I definitely did not always feel that way. And I think it really hindered me in a lot of ways. So when it comes to drinking and alcohol, these labels are a really big deal. I mean, people get really, really fussy when we start using the A words and other words. And I really do understand why. But to help you kind of maybe start to reframe it, I want to help people see it through kind of a different filter. So, I always seem to fall back on this example, but always kind of in the weight loss example or the health, physical health sort of realm. As someone who has lost a considerable amount of weight in my life, here and there, I've had my ups and downs, but am I a recovering overweight person, or am I just someone who has learned that if I that if I continue to have these unhealthy eating habits and I continue to have this unhealthy sedentary lifestyle, that I don't feel very well. I choose to think of myself as somebody who has like the type of body and mind that just does better with exercise and mostly eating clean. If someone felt the need to refer to me as a recovering fat person, okay. That's not personally how I refer to myself, but if that works for you, that's cool with me. So I think for me, healthy is the word that I've sort of landed on in pretty much all areas when I think about any habit or any behavior or anything. But definitely when it's come to my drinking, healthy is a word that I'm comfortable with. And I think it really defines, my relationship or not. When it came to my drinking, all I know is that I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol and I made a choice to leave it behind. Am I an addict? Maybe. Am I an alcoholic? Sure. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like, who gives a crap? I don't personally care. I just know that for me, I had an unhealthy relationship that needed to change. So that's sort of where I've just ended up. Now, one of the ways that I was able to get to that place is by disassociating or like dismantling the meaning behind some of these words. So what I'm going to say here is probably very simplistic and might sound a little kooky, but it works for me. So when I think of the word alcoholic or addict or whatever, insert word that makes you uncomfortable, you have to remember that that is literally just a word. It is literally, I'm overusing the word literally, letters. It's consonants and vowels that have been strung together to make this word. What gives it the clout to make you feel uncomfortable is the meaning that you attach to it, right? So let me take this one step further, and this is a little bit off topic, but over the years, I have had times in my life where I've had to detach the meaning behind certain holidays because there was a large period of my life, about a decade or so, where I did not have any family nearby. I was essentially a single mom and living in a part of the country where I currently live where I did not have any family here. So holidays were really depressing for me. They were really hard. They were really sad. If my son was with me, that was one thing. At least I had him. But if he was not with me, I was alone. And I spent many Thanksgivings, Christmases, Christmas Eves, New Year's Eves alone. And, 4th of July's and things like that. And so I really let that drag me down for quite some time until I had to say to myself, Thanksgiving is just a Thursday in November, okay? It is only, you're giving it more power than it deserves. Now, I'm not saying that Thanksgiving isn't a beautiful, wonderful holiday, that you shouldn't enjoy it with your family, none of that. But for me, it was causing me to feel so sad and depressed all the time that I had to just reframe it. And I had to detach the meaning from it because it really is just a Thursday. There's plenty of nurses and police officers and other people that don't get to see their family on Thanksgiving. They just do it the next day or. So once I kind of just got that, it became so much easier for me. And I just started moving on. It wasn't the end of the world that I was alone on Thanksgiving. And so that has become a really, really powerful tool for me in a lot of different areas of my life when necessary. So I don't think we always want to detach meaning from things, but when it's detrimental, like it can be in this case, I think it's really powerful. So the label is just the word that you've attached meaning to, okay? It does not define who I am as a person. It does not define who you are, obviously. So that being said, I realize that, this is a lot easier said than done. And especially in the very, very early stages when you're even just considering sobriety or taking a break from alcohol, or it just seems so insurmountable. And when all your friends and family drink or whatever the case might be for you, believe me, I've seen and heard it all. I'm not minimizing how big of a challenge this can be. And it's like, well, that's great for you, Jack. You're all over it and that's cool for you. But I was not always over it, and it really did hinder me. And so that's my point in having this talk today. So, I was not blind to the fact that there would be a big stigma hanging over my head. I mean, at least that was my perception of it. And I wanted nothing to do with that. So what happened for me was I let that get in the way of me exploring this relationship or this misalignment within myself any further. I mean, when I started realizing, oh, people might think I'm an alcoholic, I'm out. Like, I'm done. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And we're just going to sweep this under the rug. And that really saddens me in so many ways, because when I see how my life has transformed so much since addressing this and since starting the Sober Curious journey and then ultimately living a sober lifestyle and all the stops and starts in between, it has been one of the absolute best experiences of my life. And it just keeps getting better. And I wish that I had known that, or that someone had shortcutted that for me. And so while this may or may not resonate with you, if it does, I want you to know that that is my purpose in sharing this with you, because letting a word or label trip you up to the point that you're not going to explore your relationship with alcohol or get the support you need or community or help maybe that you need would be a shame, because life on the sober side of the street is pretty effing amazing. And I mean that with all my heart. So my advice to anybody who's thinking about their drinking and wondering whether or not it makes them A, B, or C, or, whatever, just try to remember that you're the one who gets to say what you are. You can decide what you feel comfortable with, what you feel comfortable using as a label, or like in my case, nothing at all, really. If anyone ever asks me about my drinking, I usually just respond with like, it depends on who you ask. Someone might say, oh, so you're a recovering alcoholic, or, oh, you're a fellow addict. I'd be like, I guess it depends on who you ask. Or my other go-to is, I fall back on the health thing. I just know that I have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and, we needed to break up, and, I kind of just leave it at that. So it does get so much easier. I'm sure that it seems impossible right now. I know that for sure that it felt that way for me, but once you get there and once you try it on and you find the right expression that works for you, or the right label that you're comfortable with and you identify with, and it comes out of your mouth that first time, it's terrifying. And then 3, 4, 10, 20 times later, it's like no big deal. And no one cares as much as you think they do. In fact, most people really respect the hell out of you. Some people still kind of wonder like why you would ever give up drinking, but it's not really about them, right? It's about you, and it's about me, and it's about how awesome we feel. And on that note, just keep going. If you have that still small voice inside of you that's telling you something's misaligned with your drinking, I urge you and implore you to explore it, because it can be one of the best experiences of your life. And I am here to support you in any way that I can. So on that note, let me know if you have any questions, if you have any other thoughts or labels or things that you've thought of that you'd like to bring to my attention, or anything that I've missed. Please let me know. I'm happy to always learn more. I'm happy to always hear what you have to say and to learn more as I go. Every single day is a new learning experience. The only thing I always ask is that please be respectful to me. Please be respectful to other people in the comments. Alcohol addiction, anything of that nature, is a very, very unique experience for every person, and there is no one road to recovery, in my opinion. So please don't come for me if you don't agree with that. We all might have different opinions, and so I just ask that we have a very respectful conversation. And on that note, you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.